Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Transfer Market Metrics by Anfield Index. I think it's episode 13, I think. I'm terrible with numbers, as people know, which makes it the good show for me. 13 is unlucky for some, but with the targets we've got on the docket, there is an element. I'm really looking forward to crunching the numbers on these, talking terms, thinking price, and even imagining seeing some of these in a Liverpool shirt. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. The reason I'm saying that is because I've been speaking to a man who behind the scenes has had to demist his glasses when he's been looking at the stats with a couple of the boys we're going to get onto tonight. So, Barts, I know sometimes I give you a name and we've had good surprises where you're like, why are we giving him a name? Oh, hold on, these stats are quite tight. Sometimes they're giving you a name and like, why have I just spent 20 minutes of my life or so, or even longer, reviewing this boy? And sometimes you look at names and you're like, yes, I get it. These make sense. I think it's fair to say there's two on the docket that it's easy to make sense of, isn't it?
Yeah, I think these are two, or the two that we're predominantly going to talk about, because we'll do a bit of a review at the end, are two that you could see would work for us in different ways. I think also having come off the weekend where we got to see one of them really up close, there's a lot to like. I think you start delving into it and you think, okay, I could see how that could work with us. You start thinking about combinations, and that's always a good sign. Whereas some of the other ones we've done, I've been a bit like, they're all right, but I think they're like another 6 months away from being ready for it. They're not quite. Whereas I think, personally, I think these two could probably come and play for us like easily tomorrow.
Well, I suppose, ladies and gents, without further ado, we need to get into the two. Before we've got a little surprise third segment of the show for you as well, which we'll bring. So the first one, Barts, and like you say, we saw him up close at the weekend, Matthias Cunha. Now, a player that Liverpool have liked for a long time, as we know, formerly got Red Bull caliber. We know how we like to deal with Red Bull players as well. Known, liked by Edwards for a number of years as well, in his previous sporting director. And the release clause with his new contract, about 62 million quid, isn't it, by all reports? God knows we love knowing a release clause. We know loving a set price rather than getting into a haggling contest as well. A player that I know you've talked about with versatility as well, that is liked, Matthias Cunha. How liked, Barts?
So, as always with these shows, pretty standard format, but it works for us, so we're going to stick with it, all right? Is we look at the minutes, right? We are now in the back end of another mammoth season with, maybe 20 games to go, maybe. Depending on how Champions League goes. Our boys have to be able to do large capacity minutes. They have to be able to play twice a week. We always look at that starting point. And the pleasing thing here is, whereas some of the other ones you can see they're building up the minutes, but they're still not quite at the level we would need. There is an opportunity thing here as well. Wolves are very rarely in Europe, so there would be you've kind of got to say, well, has he played the minutes he could have done? Yes, he's made 29 out of 32 starts last season. He clocked up just sort of 2,500 minutes. So he pretty much played nearly all the available minutes for Wolves. Okay. But because they weren't in Europe, he didn't get the high number starting towards to get 3,000, the rest of it. But he's already at 1,900 now. He's made 24 starts. He's made 22 out of 24 starts. So again, another season of really consistently doing it. The other thing we try and look at is, are things upwardly trending? I'm doing it the other way with the camera. So last season, 0.44. 3 seasons ago, he was at just short of 0.2 goals per 90. Then last season, 0.44. This season is 0.55. So a nice trend going up. Assists. Wasn't really doing anything his first season with Wolves. Then he went up to 0.26. This is a 1.8. So he's taken more of a goal scoring role on. And I think that also comes with a bit of the positional change. I think he spent a lot last season out on the wings, whereas this season he's played predominantly, or he has played periods of both, but also in the 10 hole. Expected. So 0.35 goals last season and 0.32 assists, fairly balanced. This time around, again, balanced 0.26, 0.26. So down a notch, but not massively amount. So overall, non-penalty XG and assists is a 0.55 per 90, which is again a progression for his previous 3 seasons. So he is on that upward trajectory. He's also in a really good age profile. So he's in Edward's favourite age profile. He's clocking the minutes. He's got the appearances. There's a lot to like in terms of that just raw data to look at. If we then start comparing it to our old favourite percentiles. So he does have 2 profiles, and we can look at both. Because I think it's important to note that where we would be asking to play. I think the versatility is a good thing for him, right? So if you look at him as an attacking mid-winger, i.e. instead of Luis Diaz, should we say, or Mo Salah, if the worst case scenario, then defensively, he performs very well. Okay, 50% for aerials, 87% for clearances, 43rd for blocks, interception 76, 59 for tackles. Bearing in mind the last show we did, was not particularly good defensively when he was in a wide area. So this is a good thing for us to see for him. Between the boxes, the middle one, progressive passes received, so that this would suggest that he's receiving the ball deep and then he's carrying it at 56 or 74 percentile, or he's making a pace, probably more likely to pass the ball. So that's not too bad. He takes 72nd percentile for take-ons. So it's a bit of a mixed bag in terms of what he does with it, but they're not horrible. His completion rate for passes is a little bit low, like 29th percentile, but it's still 73% a game. So that's still higher than a lot of our forwards achieving a game. In terms of what does he do in the box, non-penalty XG, non-penalty goal, 6th percentile. The XG side of things, he's got 59th. Shots, again, I said to you, it's got to be above 3 if approaching 5. This is only for an attacking winger. He's at nearly 3.5 shots a game. This is a good sign. If you round that all up, shot per actions, he's down the low end of it, but they're still nearly 3.5 a game. Now, so that's him as a wide-ish player. If you look at him where he played against us, so he played in the 10, you suddenly get a very rosy picture. So defensively, he then creeps up to 90s in there for tackles and interceptions. So some of the rhetoric you'll hear people talk about is, he wouldn't. And even myself, I was a little bit like, well, how's he going to oust Dom in that 10 role? How's he going to outwork? Because Dom puts in a hell of a shift in there. Well, if you look at this box here, these are exactly the kind of things that we would need to see from our 10. Or 8.5, however you want to play. Then you look at what does he do in there. So he's also making more passes than most players in that position. He's making more progressive passes, which is good. He's making more carries. He's taking people on. These are all very good things. The bad thing for someone playing that further forward is he's in the 40th percentile touch in the penalty box. So that's not great. But if we look at what happens in the box, the goals, again, 76 pretty decent. Keep clicking on that for some reason. Apologies. Shots total 3.3, 80th percentile. So these are all very. This is looking at a very good profile if you play him a little bit further forward. Maybe as a false 9. I don't know. And if we compare him with, say, let's be honest, the 2 players that are. Is it fair to say the most likely to leave? So Diaz and Nunez are probably the most likely to leave. So if we look at him as an AM with Diaz, so Diaz is red, by the way. He does better in terms of the defensive side than Diaz, and he's slightly below the rest in terms of some of the attacking metrics. Again, as I always say, opportunity to do things. Yeah, he plays for Wolves. Their average possession is about 40% in a game. Our average possession is 60. That is almost 10 more minutes of ball, 10 to 15 minutes more ball time. So you are going to get more opportunity to do this stuff than you are playing for a lower leg side. If we compare it as a forward, though, because Diaz has also played that position for us, and he compares, I would say, very well in that element. Pass completion is the one note of being a dramatically below, and also the assists and goals combined. But on the whole, he's better off the ball in that position than Diaz, and I think he fairly does match him in terms of all the other metrics. Now, if we roll the dice though and say, well, how about the other forward we've got? Let's compare him with Nunez. Well, I would say Cunha is probably profiling better than Nunez in nearly all elements, apart from receiving the ball in a progressive nature, some of the dribbles, and some of the XG grade. So, yeah, if you look at it as a forward, he compares very well with our two current incumbents. I don't know whether I've got Jota on the docket. If I have, I'll put him up there. No, I haven't. But so that's interesting to know. If you want to compare him with Diaz, again, in the wide areas, he is a little bit of a mirror, but he does show some elements of what you'd expect from our wide players. If I can find Cody, just flicking through. There you go, Cody. Cody's a different kind of wide player. We've always said that. Cody's a very different wide player than Cunha. So from an F-brief point of view, he does look very good. If we look at the more, this is actually against us. So where was he picking the ball up? He was picking it up in just outside zone 14, which is good. This is kind of what you'd expect him to be involved in. He was receiving the ball, considering Wolves in the first half didn't have a lot of the ball. Second half, he was still pretty much their go-to man. So he's getting a touch or he's making a pass nearly 1 a minute for the whole game. So that's pretty good, considering they didn't have a lot of the ball in the first instance, right? If you look at involvement in our key areas, again, considering the volume they had, first half, they were non-existent as a team. Second half, he got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He's got about 9 passes in and around the areas we would expect our players to be in. Looking at the defensive side of things, he won nearly 100% of the duels he faced where threat was a problem, right? So the off-ball stuff that you would expect a false 9 to do, he did his job for the team on that. And if you look at the off the ball defensive actions, so we are asking him to operate in these areas, or we would be, sorry, and he did again some good numbers supporting the wide areas quite well. So I would suggest this looks to be an interesting. This is where he took his shots from. He's produced a lot of balls XG at the weekend. So normally when we run these, right, a player won't have a lot in this column because this is just their own stuff. But this is how involved he was. He has got a full set of data. So that tells you he was their kind of star of the show, even on a shot map. These are all the shots for a game. Typically, you'd see 1 dot on there against us. So this is a pleasing thing. And I asked, I phoned a friend for some physical data, and Si was very helpful. And Cunha's top speed, I think, this season, is per 90, is 33.9, with over 32, or is being rapid. So that he is very quick. Number of sprints is 16 a game, which again is good, and he's clocking in just sort of 11k a game. So they physical output are extremely useful to know. That would give us some searing pace on the counter, which has been if you lose Diaz has lost a bit of pace because of his injuries. So you take him out of the side. Cody is quicker than you think, but he's not the searing explosive pace. And Nunez as well, to be fair to him, has got that pace as well. So if you take those two out, you are then running with a relatively, I mean, no Premier League slow, but you know what I'm saying, a slower breakaway side. So that would give us a definite attacking output at pace. You know, nearly 34k. Top speed is an exceptional speed. Sorry.
Interesting. Tell you what, there is a million things to like about this Cunha profile. And I hadn't really clocked it until, to be fair, you showed it and you told us about it, that even when you look at his history, he's got serious minutes actually on the wing with Atletico at times and Red Bull as well. You know, played the 10. So versatility comes into it. Like you say, the speed element. And I did want to ask you, Barts, because of the versatility, that the areas that he plays, which showed up on the stats as well, 13 goals and 4 assists. And this isn't to sort of make it directly, but based on what we've profiled, is there an argument that Cunha is almost the closest to Bobby that we've seen or profiled so far on the show? And where he picks up the ball?
That's a tricky one. So I think Pedro, who we have profiled, he has some very similar Bobby traits. Cuna's probably got might have more goal involvements at this stage than he did. Bobby was very streaky, right? He was always creative, heavy.
True.
But in terms of actual goal output, he was quite streaky. So he could be a little bit more than Bobby was. But no, I think in terms of certainly off the ball, the profile he's got here, I would suggest he's very Bobby-like. You could see we could play him in a false 9 to drop in. And we sometimes like to play with a double 10, don't we, with Dom? And you could see the pair of them absolutely terrorising a double pivot or a centre half. You could see them doing that. And then because of his pace, he would then be able to get in behind, they'd win the ball and you could see him playing in the game. Whereas Bobby, again, wasn't slow, but he could still go and do the thing. So, I think that could be really a really interesting combination. Whereas I think Pedro's got a lot to like about him as well, but I think he is on more the creative side than the attacking. But
yeah, it might be a case of what output do you want, the creativity or the goal element in those two. And the final one I wanted to put to you about Cunha is you've always talked about referencing what Ian Graham's had in his book, the Michael Edwards textbook, or the way he plays things, shall we say, that they don't know and get involved in bidding wars. They will know a top price point for a player always in metrics. We know Cunha has a set fee of 62 million, or I think around 62 million in the release clause in his new contract. It's not a small, but in terms of if you want someone to play as your 9 or forward in the Premier League, it's not massive big bucks, is it?
No, I mean, I think personally, Mike's just put that in there. Versatility is a buzzword. I think, I do think, as much as I agree, top teams don't need that, but I think if you look at the options you could have with this lad, if you sign this lad over, say, Pedro, sign over Pedro. Pedro can play the 9 or the 10. He hasn't really done the wide stuff, right? This lad's played wide, and he's played anywhere across the front three. He's a bit like Jota when he first signed for Jota. Could play wide right, could play wide left, and he can play down the middle. This lad can do that. And he's done the minutes for it, and he's got the gas, and he's got the output, and he's only 60 million quid. Just think about that now, right? Rather than having to waste some midfielders at a bit of park and midweek, you just put Cunha out there, and then you could just drop him into up front. You could have that versatility, whereas we haven't got that at the moment because we put Diaz up front. It's an experiment. It hasn't really worked, right? We don't really have an option if he's not going to play Nunez other than Jota. So I think having those players that can do that and do it well will be interesting. He would have to tweak the system a little bit because if you're going to play him as your false 9, that is different to what he's asking his 9 to do. But then his 9s, he is asking to drop in and do a lot of work as double 10. So I think for £60 million, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a more likable player. But let's see who else we could get in. There might be other players that we want to get in to play the 9.
True. And Mike's asking as a follow-up there, here with FSG model, we're only going to pick up starters. And is he the best starting option striker available? That's where I'm looking, if I'm correct. Mike, at the end, the final segment, bit of a spoiler alert. we may just be asking Barts around his preferences because we've profiled quite a few forwards, strikers, wingers, whatever you want to call them. So I promise we will be looking at that. And sticking on a forward theme, and this one, Barts, this is a striker, no two way about it. This is one where we've got to be honest on this to set the tone. We've been asking, we speak to journos, the various pods, the various shows we do, so the information that we give you. Yes, very much liked to Anfield. I don't think it's any surprise that Alexander Isak is liked by many at Liverpool. Liverpool would love to have him. Getting him out of Newcastle, getting the fee right, it is a very different ball game. We know this would be figures, and for someone said it, yes, we absolutely understand that it's going to be probably over 100 million if we can get. Actually, though, to be honest, the info we've had via AI is that doesn't necessarily deter Liverpool. They would pay a big investment because long term, when Mo Salah goals, sure the goals are there. However, Newcastle qualifying for the Champions League or not, as the case may be, probably has to come into it. But if those things do line up and all the ducks are in a row, do the stats say that Liverpool should be, as we're being told, bang in, if they could even be, for Isak?
Start the same place. Minutes played, and I'll lead into that a little bit more with Isak. So last season he came in and he played. I think he came. Did he come in January? My memory
yeah,
right?
He did, didn't he? Yeah.
Right. So he played 1,500 minutes, considering he joined in January. And he helped them get into Champions League. So that's a fairly decent amount of minutes to do in half a season, which is good. And he made 17 out of 22 starts. Last season, he topped out at just sort of 2,300 minutes, and he made 27 out of 30 starts. So, okay. And this season, he started every game in the league for Newcastle, which is an improvement. And he's just sort of 1,900 minutes. So that's lower than the lad we just sent. Remember, Cunha's at 2-4 already. But yeah, so there's some things to be. So he could be starting and then bringing him off. Again, not against that. Managing minutes, we kind of have to do that with some of our players. Goals.
Yeah.
I mean, he came in for half season and got 0.59, which is higher than anyone we've profiled so far, per 90, that is. He's in last season 0.84 per 90, and he's 0.81 per 90 this season. So an assist is not really his game, but he has improved that this season from a measly 0.6, 0.8 to 0.24. So that's showing a good trend, actually, that he could actually start helping us to score goals, as well as obviously putting it away and nearly won a game. XG is lower this season than he was last season, so he was around 0.81 last season, so he's bang on. This season, he is overperforming his XG by nearly 20%, which is interesting. It's not sustainable, but probably a good streak to have rather than what we currently have, which we have one of our strikers who's underperforming his XG. So it's always good to have someone who's having a hot streak, and you ride that basically, and then you put someone else in. Assists is pretty much where he was. I think what's he got? He's actually overperforming assists as well. So he's 0.24 to 0.18, which isn't that bad. So we don't have to worry about that too much. So as a combined, he's actually gone up. So he came into Newcastle, it's 0.52, went up to 0.7, and then now it's 0.8. That's a good trend to be having for someone of that nature. If we look at his shooting, because it's important to look at that, we talk about per 90. So when he came in, he was just sort of 3 shots a game or per 90. Then he dropped down last season 2.87. He's now at 3 shots a game, which is good. That's a good number to have. We want our forwards to be taking shots. Shots on target, around 1.5 a game. That's good as well. So there was definitely some good numbers to be had there. He's nearly at 3 and 7 shots per 90 on target. Let's look at it. Passing, just have a look at it. Completion in around the 70s, which is higher than our forwards. So that's not a bad profile to be having. To be honest, there's a lot to like in a lot of his metrics per 90. If we get into our usual, you have to be straight up here. He's improving every year, as Mike said there. He is a forward, right? We haven't got any other profiles to look at. He's going to play down the middle. If you're going to spend £100 million, he's your 9. All right. So let's just get away from anything else. He is playing the 9 for us. Okay. So defensively, we still ask our 9 to do a bit of work though, and he does a lot of blocks, which is different to what we ask our 9 to do. We ask our 9 to cover passing lanes, which you see in the interceptions, not really tackle, and we'd also ask them to come back and do aerial defensive work. So this might just, a lot of this is dependent on what the manager wants you to do, right? So I'm not saying he hasn't got the skills to do that. It's just he's not doing it at the moment for Newcastle. So there you go. I mean, blocks at 78% wasn't bad, but I'm just saying it's not what we ask our 9s to do. If you look at what he's doing between the boxes, though, very nice green. I mean, progressive passes 89, carries 90 seconds, take ons 90 seconds, touches in the penalty box 86 percentile. There was a lot to like here. And this is also, you might be thinking, well, hang on a minute, why is he receiving that many progressive passes? It's because they play on the counter a lot, right? So he's the out ball, and then he's asked, go on then, go to the centre half. So that is decent. And then what does he run out of gas when he gets in the box? No, he doesn't. Non-penalty goals, 96 percentile. Non-penalty XG, 94th. Shots total, 73rd. So it could be a notch higher, but still pretty good. Shot creating actions, 89th percentile. So for a 9, this is a very, very good player to be had. Okay. If you look at comparing it to what we've got, I won't compare it with Jota because I think the likelihood that Jota stays because of injuries and us being is high. Nunez, I think we're all aware of, is circling around the exit door, should we say? And there you go. There's a comparison of profiles. Isak, or however you want to pronounce it, I need to get that right. Dominates on most of the metrics. The only ones which is, as I said, is the off the ball work, which is probably down to what he's been asked to do at Newcastle. But in terms of all the attacking instincts, he is at least 10 or 5 percentage points above Nunez at this particular moment. If you want to be comparing with some of the lads we've looked at, let's just have a look, see if Diaz is still on here somewhere. No, he's not. The lad we just looked at, Cunha.
Yeah.
Similar. Yeah. But again, he still dominates on the attacking, but Cunha gives you the off-ball work, which you would expect with it if he was going to play false 9. Isak's not going to give you a false 9. He's going to be a 9. So you're going to rely on the 3 behind him with a 2 pivot to do what you need to do. But that's fine. If he's giving you that in terms of an attacking output, I sign me up. Basically, that's absolutely fine by me. I ran a profile for him as I would do for these shows. Did it get Southampton? I think he had a good game. But I mean, sometimes it's good to give it a game where he's going to get an opportunity to see what he did. He's heavily involved in the pass networks, which is good. So he's receiving vertical passes here and around, which is what you want. The other thing you've got to look at is he's not involved in play that much, considering against Southampton, they would have had a lot of the ball. He's not as involved, so that's something to bear in mind. And our old favourite, where does he pop up? So again, he's not, because he's a 9. He's not going to be in these areas, but he's still involved in about eight passes in and around the half zones. It's only 14 and a half spaces. So that's not too bad. It's just not. It's not where you might expect him to be. Off the ball, he doesn't. He didn't compete with anything. So again, that off the ball work is something that he would have to potentially develop, should we say? Because even against Southampton, he's doing about a 2% on the defensive actions, which typically we would have between. Across those zones, we'd have about 15% of our defensive actions when we're going for it. So, he's not wholly around that. This is the stuff that you buy him for, though. All of his shots in the penalty box, 3 out of his 4, right between the sticks. That's the stuff that that's what you're buying him for. I think Mike's there. You can. I do think against the best of the best, though, you're going to need your 9 to still do a bit of defensive work, which Nunez has had to work on and does. He did do a bit of you're right. And ultimately, if he puts the ball in the back of the net at the rate he's been doing, then you could get away with him just doing some shuffling and cutting things up. So I think it's this is a 9. He has very good metrics. Would score us goals, I have no doubt.
Tell you what, those stats are pretty special. And again, just to reiterate, if you're coming in later to this, we said at the top of the segment, the info we have is Liverpool are interested in Isak. They would be a player. He's a player they would like to acquire. They also know it will be very difficult because of the price point, although the price point isn't what's sort of putting them off at all. It's more the fact that if we're in the Champions League next year, and unless Isak says, I want to go, it is going to be very difficult. But just to be clear, our info is that they do like this player. No two ways about it. Now, but the chat has been bubbling there. I can see Paul Smith's put, I would sign both Hugo Ekitike and Cunha over Isak. So Paul's got his opinion there. I'm probably pronouncing this wrong, so apologies. I think it's not Caesar. Says Cunha does a lot on a team like with Matt Grav and Szoboszlai. Would that impact production? I think to go back a little bit to Cunha, we actually said because of his versatility, he could really complement those or even dovetail with them well, couldn't he, in terms of his work rate there?
Yeah, 100%. I think if he's coming into any of those positions, I mean, a club like Liverpool, you have expectations to work hard, but I think that would give him a platform with more of the ball. I think you might see his outputs go through the roof. Really, he could actually, he's improved year on year. Both these players, to be said, have improved year on year for 3 years. That's a great position to be in, to be buying, and they're both not bad age profiles as well. The only thing I didn't do with Isak, sorry, people will ask about his injury record, because people do. So this season, 24-25, he's missed 38 days, which was 8 games. Last season, he missed 56 days, which was 12 games. So, the season before, when he first joined, he missed, let's not go there, right? 107 days. So he missed 18 days. So that is coming down, should we say? And that's fair. It is coming down. And that could explain why he started every game, but his minutes are not as high as Cunha's, because they are managing his load. That could cause you a problem, as we've just, anyone who go and watch that, we have a problem against City that basically our starting can only play 60 minutes. But if he gives you output for that 60 minutes that you can 100% put the game away, then maybe it's not something to worry about. You might have someone like Jota come on and do your rotation options with. So I think we'd be lying if we didn't say he didn't have an injury a history of injury. It is getting better, and that could mean that we'd have to manage his minutes. But at least you know what you're buying when you go into the shop.
Yeah. And let's be honest, people, when you see the stats and the profile there, and I'm sure what you see with your eye test as well, there is a lot to like about this forward as well. The questions are flying in. I can see people are putting their opinions in regards to forwards. And that is what I want to put to you, Barts. It's not exact science, I know, and things could change. We never know what happens with contracts, injuries, all those types of things. But just for an update, this is episode 13 of the show. So I've just put it there in the chat panel. The 5 big attackers or forwards that we know we've got interest in. So we bring them to TMM and do it this way. So far are Cunha, Isak, who we've done tonight, Ekitike at Frankfurt, João Pedro at Brighton, and Semenyo, the flyer, at Bournemouth. And I know the Sadie put earlier, can you look at Charles De Ketelaere? I won't ask Barts to pronounce that at all because he's the facilitator type that Slot likes. Got to be honest, the Sadie, we've asked about that. We've got nothing that we can say he is liked by Liverpool. If that comes in, I promise he will come on the docket because he's a player that interests me and people have been talked about. But until we get something, we operate how we operate in TMM. But Barts, Cunha, Isak, Ekitike, João Pedro, Semenyo. Now, just as a summary or to bring people up to speed, to give almost a quick blast on what I said, you've seen Cunha and Isak, so you know how much we like those two, definitely. Look at this. Captain Slug has gone already saying Kuza over Isak and Ekitike. Good injury record and physical presence. There's debate going to flow with this. I know you are not going to please everyone, Bart. Ekitike, potential, young, physicality. I know you brought that to the fore that way as well. I know you like Pedro and his ability to drop deep, as you described in the most Bobby-like out of the ones we've looked at, probably maybe output, but a creative player more than anything. And Semenyo, who I know all the physical attributes that made those notes you talked about, an absolute flyer. And when we say flyer, we're talking the two fastest players in the Premier League both seasons. Almost Mane reborn, as someone described him, but output was your question, Barts, there, when I know you looked at that. So that's just a summary, people, to bring you up to speed. Bart said it earlier, it's right. There's no if Darwin Nunez is at Liverpool, whether you like this statement or not, next summer, something's gone wrong. It's that simple. We know that as well in the plan. We also know that Luis Diaz is more likely out of all the forwards to depart with age profile. So with that in mind, Barts, is there any two you're kind of meandering over or leaning towards, if that's the right phrase at all?
Yeah, I think I see the Brode over this quite a lot, actually. There was I think those who've watched the show before, I quite like Gittins, to be fair, at one point, but then I looked at him for 90 and he hadn't really kicked on. You've also got to put in the bully tax, which would take his metrics down by a bit, whereas all the players we're looking at here, apart from Ekitike, are from the Premier League. So you've got what you've got, right? The metrics here are comparable with what we're comparing apples with apples, right? So that gives us a little bit of safer, because the one concern for me coming in, unless you're buying, and even then, buying from a foreign league, because we're losing two players that play a lot of minutes. I mean, even Nunez is going to play minutes, right? You're going to have to get one of those right. Yeah, and we haven't got an infinite budget. So that's why I'm not saying Premier League is best, but I think we've got some good options. I think it's probably the way forward. Excuse me. So,
yeah, no doubt.
If I go through maybe some of the ones that I've moved away from. So, Semenyo, the Bournemouth lad, right?
Semenyo. Yeah.
Semenyo. He can only play wide. Right, he's not going to give you an option down the middle. All right, so he's profiling his attacking. We've been in before. He might be on an upward trajectory, but I think he's probably half a season away from the others. I think we need to see a bit more output in terms of his creating threats, which we said on the show. Go back to probably episode 10 when we did that. But he's not in that. He's not getting the shots in the box, and he's just not quite where we are. In fact, so he's having a good season, but can he do it again? And for the price Bournemouth are going to ask for him, I think there might be profiles that are better suited. So if you look at him in comparison with Cunha, who I think we've done, they are very similar. We can all see that. They're very, very similar here. And Cunha probably outperforms him on a lot of the shot, on the sort of the goal, the output part that I'm saying he needs to work on, and his pass to completion, which is the side for Liverpool. You need to have that. Okay, so the output part is missing, I think, from Semenyo's profile, and Cunha gives you that, and also Cunha can play up front. So for me, therefore, Semenyo is a little bit down. If you compare him, do we say Ekitike, was he up front or not? Was he? more down the middle.
Yeah. Can play wide, but up front a lot. Yeah.
Right. So here he's got as a forward. So comparing him with the lad we just looked at, Isak, very, very similar. I'm not going to not beat around the bush here, but he is going to come from abroad. Okay, so he is going to have a bully tax. So all of these metrics, you're going to have to take 50% off per 90.
Yeah.
But he does profile very similar. He doesn't pass the ball as well as Isak, and his touches in the box and his tackles and aerials are not as good. But in terms of a lot of the other metrics, he's on par. Okay, we also know he's rapid. Just to know as well, the other stat that I didn't give you for Isak. Isak's top speed this season is clocked in at 34.2, and he does about 19 sprints a game, and he's just under 10k a game, which is a little bit not what our forwards do. A lot more of that, but that shows you that what we're saying. He's a 9, right? So Isak isn't slow, but we know Akito is quick. So, and his profile, a lot of green to like about that. Again, off the ball, not so great. So there's the two comparisons there. If we compare him with the lad we've just done, though, on the same profile, so Cunha's red. Cunha outperforms him on the passing. He's down a little bit on the actual, some of the output, non-penalty XG and the rest of it, but holds his hand up off the ball really well. Dribbling, again, he's down towards Akito. Speed-wise, comparable. Two of them are quick. So you're not losing anything by not getting Akito over Cunha. So there's a lot to like, and you wouldn't have to downgrade Cunha's metrics, whereas you would for Akito. All right. So there is a lot to like comparing those two, plus that Akito can only play down the middle. The final one that we've looked at, which is João Pedro, who's currently at our favourite club, Brighton. If we just compare him forwards, because I don't think we're going to look at Pedro in terms of a wide. If we look at him, he's a very, very different profile. I'm not sure I don't think we're profiling for that at all. We compare him for the forwards. Again, off the ball, some bits to work on, but he is very good at the interceptions and the tackles because he does the blocking the passing lanes, because that's how Brighton set up to do that. In between the box, as good as Cunha. In the box, not as good. Okay, so his shots are down at 2, Cunha's up at 3.5. So there's differences there, but that's because, as I said, Pedro is more of the creator false nine, whereas Cunha would be the more of the attacker. But if you compare the profiles, again, not that dissimilar, but it comes down to these two areas here, which is the defensive elements different, and the non-penalty goals are higher for Cunha versus, as I said, Pedro is the passer, so he's got the dribblers and the progressive passes. So there's a lot to, in a roundabout way, if I compare Pedro, I've got him in here. I got Pedro, Isak, we go. Yeah. So Pedro with Isak will dominate him on pretty much all the attacking, but again, Pedro keeps him up on his mark in terms of creative and outperforms him in terms of aerial. So if you're going to push me, what would I do? I'm having now spent a lot of time looking at the stats. I think for £62 million, we would be stupid not to be going for Cunha. I think for £62 million, but what he can offer you in the falsy 9, the 10, and wide, and his injury record, and he's quick. I think if we give him more of the ball, his output could carry on progressing, which it already is progressing better than. He's already got higher per 90 than Cody Diaz this season. So those are some good numbers to be looking at. If I was being greedy, and someone said it earlier on, if you're selling Diaz and Nunez, you're not going to be short of cash. Because we know the Nunez bid was about £75 million, right? Diaz is not going to go for, I would say, less than 50. Yeah. So, in the way that Edwards works, the numbers are not that far off to say I'll have Isak and Cunha. That might be greedy, but the numbers aren't that far. The advantages you have if you buy someone who could potentially play the 10 as well with Cunha is that Dom would then not have to be the only player there. Dom could play as one of the 8.
Yeah.
It would give you another midfielder on a flexibility thing. Not all the time, but on a rotation element, you would have another option in there who has the physicality to play. Whereas currently, our other option in there is Harvey, and he won't play. Right? Whereas Cunha wouldn't be able to play in that area and do it. So there's some other options that you could do. But Cunha, for the package for me, the £62 million, I'll be really surprised. Knowing the history with Edwards likes to go out to players he's previously scouted and done a deal on or set something up. I think this is it makes a lot of sense to have pace, power, and a bit of flexibility in the forward lines.
Interesting. And the comments are flying in. So we'll deal with these one by one. So Jan had commented there about metrics and visuals for Jota or Gakpo when they arrive versus now to see what's changed. A little bit late to the party in the unfortunate way, Jan, is when we've talked about players, we've mentioned Jota before, funny enough, in Semenyo and Cunha comparisons, as Barts has done before. We do look at that 3-year period. And to use a bit of Bart's terminology there, just so I can prove I am listening, the supernova, that element that Ian Graham talks about, and they're looking for players to really go there over the 3-year period. So it will be one of the earlier episodes with Semenyo. Just don't ask me to name the number because I get that wrong each time. The next one that I'm going to put to you, Bart, because Mike's asked it about Cunha liked him by far the main man. I think you've convinced him. But as the main man, maybe the 9, does that skew the metrics compared to other players? And I think this is a good question because I know you liked his versatility. If they see him as the 9 and that facilitator, as Slot called it, does that tip the metrics at all? Or do you think it could be, no, he's a good number 9. He can also play the others like a Jota if needed?
I think I'll put it to you the other way. At the moment, our 9, to be frank, isn't adding to the metrics as we should do, right? The amount of chances that we create for the player in the forward area and they do not score is having a negative impact on the metrics of the other players. If you have a player like Cunha in there you potentially, or current form, would take those opportunities or might then return the favor, return it or be involved in play, I think you could see it's never going to be even because in most other states, and he's always going to be the dominant creator. But I think you might see those creative numbers go up because you'll actually have a 9 who put the chances away more regularly. Yeah. And if you play him on the left, you'd have output from the left, which our current output from the left is very hot and cold. Cody's been good, but then he's also had periods where he hasn't done it. Diaz, I think he scored recently, but as I said, it was his first time in 10 games. So you might have a more balanced picture in terms of the metrics, whereas at the moment, it's very much like you've got someone basically playing godlike for the entire season on the right wing, and then everyone else trying to just keep up, but not with any regularity.
Interesting. So there you have it, ladies and gents. Pretty much, Isaac, funnily enough, recent ones, it's fair to say, Bart, Isak and Cunha probably jumped to the top of the list if we can get them. I suppose one final question I want to put to you, because we have said about Isak, it is he is a player that's sponsored, but as we told you there, for all the reasons, it is highly unlikely. If it was Cunha and another, have you got a third? Would you be like, maybe there's one? Because obviously, if you're not going for Isak, you've probably got a bigger budget, haven't you, in that regard as well? So if there was one, you're leaning towards one at all at the moment?
I still like Pedro. I think Pedro gives you a lot. But it would have to be a choice. What I mean by that, I still think Slot at times wants his 9 to get him the goals, right? So, and he wants them to work. If he went with someone like João Pedro, he would have to embrace the fact that he's actually playing a proper false 9. He's not just putting a player up there who he trusts more, which is Diaz, and it's actually a tweak to the system. So, but João Pedro for me, I like a lot. Akite, he's got pace, he can finish, but I just worry about that movement over from the Bundesliga. That's all. Semenya for me, no. I think I've said that numerous times. I think he's probably 6 months, a little bit behind where we need. But yeah, if it wasn't Isak, João Pedro would be probably my pick with Cunha. And it would have to be a tweak to the system, but it would be an exciting one because you potentially would have gas on the left, pace on the left, you have a player dropping in, helping out Dom. Whoever's there on the right, if it's Mo doing the creative stuff, you could get a really dynamic front three again, which at times this season we've lacked a little bit. Got a bit stuck.
Which also did make me think, as you've told us on the previous shows, Barts, that if Trent does go, you are losing a lot of your creativity. And the one thing you would get with Cunha and Pedro together, your creative output would go right up from an attacking sense. So maybe that is something to consider in that regard as well. And Captain Slugger, I know you've put there about the way Slot mentioned specific players, makes me think he rates Cunha, Miguel Gutierrez, and Rashford. Bit of a contrast there. Cunha, yes, as Bart said. Miguel Gutierrez, I can tell you factually, is the lowest rated player we've put on the kit for TMM so far. His profile did not really particularly fit what we will be looking for in a left back. So just one to think about there. Ladies and gents, we have got him to go overtime. We have got him to answer all your questions. And thank you very much for your interactions. I generally can't remember a TMM where we've had so many questions, so much discussions. I can tell you've enjoyed it. I know I've enjoyed it. And hopefully, as I ask him, Barts, thank you for everything. Thank you for the stats, the analysis. Hopefully, it's been one you've enjoyed at the same time.
Definitely. I think it's always exciting, isn't it? Everyone loves to buy a player. I think it gives us a little glimpse sometimes. As we get towards more now, the hard and fast lists are forming. I think you can start to get an idea about what Liverpool 25-26 will start to look like, which is exciting.
Yeah, no doubts at all. And I know a few of you are asking, the good reason we're doing this now is late February, when things start to form towards the summer or even earlier. It's just a case of almost rerunning, updated, seeing where they fit, doesn't it? There we go, ladies and gents. Thank you for everything tonight. Thank you for all your comments, people. 13 does not prove unlucky to some if you can land a Cunha or an Isak, but we will have to see what happens there. And ladies and gents, that was the transfer market metrics.